Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Happy Thanksgiving. This is our final episode of the year before we go dormant for the winter. So today, we're going to try and get you through the winter months with advice on things you could be doing. If you have a lawn, a vegetable garden, or ornamental plants around your home, you want to stay tuned. Your winter to-do list, that's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. So stay with us.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Tanya Ashworth. Tanya is a UT Extension agent in Fayette County. Booker T. Lee is here. Booker is a UT Extension agent right here in Shelby County. And Walter Battle is here. Walter is Extension Director over in Haywood County. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for having me.
We're winding down for the winter, but there are still a few things you could be doing before spring rolls around. So today, we're going to take it month by month with our best suggestions. Tanya, what's on your to-do list for December?
Well, a couple more things to do out there in the yard. If you haven't done so yet, and I haven't at my house, get out there with the rake and get those last fallen leaves up. You can rake them into your beds and have free organic mulch. Or if you don't want to do that, put them in a pile in the backyard for compost. Just please don't put them in a plastic bag and put them on the curb.
Agreed.
While you're out there, go ahead and cut yourself some nice cedar, some holly, some nandina for holiday decorations inside your house, or make a swag for your front door.
That'd be good.
And then inside your house, go ahead and get started on your poinsettias, keeping them watered. I like to check mine twice a week. You don't want your poinsettia ever to wilt. If it wilts, that's when you're going to have all those leaves start to fall off of them. But you don't want them to stay soggy either, so don't let them sit in a saucer of water. They like it kind of medium. And then you can also start forcing your bulbs, like your amaryllis, either in soil or in water.
Soil or water. Okay, so that's our December to-do list for our ornamental plants. Booker, what about lawns? What are we doing in December?
One of the things that we need to do in December with our lawns is get all those dead leaves off there. You know, when the leaves fall off the lawn, get them off there. Like Tanya said, you don't want to put them in. You don't want to put them on the curb. You can run your lawnmower across them and back them up and put them in your vegetable gardens somewhere. That'd be good organic material. But you want to get them off that lawn because if they stay there, they don't mat that lawn down, and there'll be a problem for disease to control. It be disease on your lawn, and also it have some kind of winter kill. For next year, you know, this last year we had a bad case of winter kill on lawn, and that was some of the problem because the grass stayed wet for a long time. Then we had a hard freeze, and that would cause that winter kill to get on your lawn.
Now, what about storing our lawnmower? Because that's going to be really important for this time of the year.
One of the things about storing lawnmower, you want to make sure you get all the, change your oil in your lawnmower, but put some more back in there now, because you don't want to stop in the springtime with no gas in it, no oil in it. And another thing, anytime you're working on your lawnmower, make sure you unspool the spark plug. And also you might want to clean the spark plug, or get a new one put in there, and also run all the gas out of the lawnmower and use a stabilizer. You have some gas left in there, and never leave your gas tank half full. Make sure you have it empty or full up. Put a stabilizer in there. You put a stabilizer in there, make sure you start it up and let it get through the line and everything, keep that gas fresh in there. But I like to do mine, I like to take everything out of there, no gas in it, change the oil. This is a good time to sharpen your lawnmower blade. You know, when you get ready to go next year, it's already sharp. Just take it off there and get it sharp and put it back on there, and get that mower ready to go in the springtime next year. That's a good thing for your lawnmower, Well,
good. Now, how about this? Can we test our soil?
Oh, this is a good time to test soil. We in the fall months and the winter months is a good time to test soil now, because if you test it now, you need to add pH in there, add lime to your soil. This would be a good time to do that because it'll be ready to go next year when your grass start to grow. And for most lawn grass, you want between 6.0 and 6.5. So if anything lower than that, you need to add lime to it. So if anything higher, you might need to add sulfur to it to bring it back down to where you want it. For fescue, zoysia, and Bermuda grass. Those are the main 3 grasses that we have here in West Tennessee. So that's a good thing. Get that soil test, and we do have soil boxes at our office. Come out and pick them up. It costs $7 a box. and that'd be one of the best tests that you can do for your lawn this time of the year.
All right. You can do soil tests.
You can do so.
All right, Walter. What about vegetable garden in December?
Well, all I want you to do is now get your journal out that you've been keeping during the growing season, and just start looking at the things. What varieties performed well. Were there any varieties that you saw at some field days or whatever that you might want to try this coming year? Were there any low spots in the garden where water kind of settled? This is the time of year that you would want to fix that. Also look at things like did you suspect any kind of resistance to any kind of fungicides or herbicides or anything like that? Then you know not to do that. You also will know where to rotate for next year's garden. Where you had your legume crops such as beans and peas this year, well then next year you'll put your tomatoes and your corn in those spots. It's just all kind of little things like that you can start doing.
Okay. Christmas is right around the corner. What about Christmas gifts for gardeners?
Oh yes, I bought a few examples here. Every gardener can use a good a good rake here. Right. And this is a good one here that have that Teflon stuff on it, so it won't rust. So that's a nice one to get. Also, you always need a wide brim hat to work out there in the yard with. So we have that as well.
Yeah, that's a good gift there.
Oh yes, because sun, really a lot of people get sun cancer and stuff. And, skin cancer. And then of course, some people still use chemicals and getting a nice, some of these nitrite gloves here where you can mix and safely mix it. Those are all very, very good gifts. And also wheelbarrows and you have knee pads, some little pruners. And also, like where Book has lawnmowers, I have tillers.
Okay.
So so you can kind of get those things as well.
Okay. Now when Booker did mention about taking care of your lawnmower, do you take care of your tillers the same way?
Same way.
Okay.
Same way. Yes.
So just drain it out and put your oil back in, or
put your oil in. Like he said, either leave it full of gas or leave it empty. Just one or the other.
Okay. So. All right, so that's our December to-do list. All right, here's our Q&A. Before we move on to January, we have a viewer question from Mary Down in Holly Springs. This year, our watermelon had spot on them, and then they began to rot. Our turnips have the same spots underground in the same field. What do we think that is? Any ideas?
With them having the same
It's the same spots they had on the watermelon that they had on the turnip.
I'm thinking anthracnose.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I thought. Okay.
And due to the fact that we had a very wet year, you're going to get anthracnose problems. That's just going to happen. I saw it a lot in watermelon fields this year, just where they would get those spots and just rot.
Okay, you want to add something to that, Booker?
One of the things you might want to do, like Walter said, rotate the vegetable in your garden each year. If you had this year, maybe put it somewhere else there, maybe that's, and not get on there again this year. And make sure you have good drainage in your vegetable garden.
That's right.
But rotate those vegetables in the garden is really a good thing to help.
Okay, and I'll tell you something else I would suggest. Look for resistant varieties.
Yes.
Okay, that goes a long way in helping as well. And practice good sanitation. I know we talked about that before. Okay, and here's our next question. Also, what makes deformed places on my pears, and what can I do about it? So what do we think about that one? Any ideas, Tony?
Probably stink bug damage. Probably late in the summer they got onto your orchard and their feeding caused kind of the deformed look.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, I was just going to throw in, if you go the chemical route, you're probably looking at malathion, something like that to treat it. But if you use some of the all-purpose fruit sprays, they'll have the malathion in it. So
along with Captan.
Along with Captan, so that'll probably take care of your problem.
Okay. Booker, anything?
No, that's good. I think stink bug would do that cost, and then they'll probably call it dark inside too in there. So yeah, stink bug, they really damage the plants.
And stink bugs are pretty hard to control. What you have, so you better catch them. The eggs, you better catch them when they're at that stage. So you have to do some scouting.
Yes, you have to do some scouting, and also they, they cover a wide variety of crops.
Oh yes.
And ornamental things as well. So they're not a specialist like the boll weevil.
They're really good. They're really tough on pecan tree. And pecan, you had no problem with stink bugs.
Okay. So we're thinking that is stink bugs, Miss Mary. So there you have it. All right, Booker, let's talk about what we need to be doing in our lawn in January.
One of the things in January now, and we're getting close to January, in January you need to make sure that you start doing your like a pre-emerge. Get the last 2 weeks you had out there in your lawn and prevent those weeds from coming up. You might want to put a pre-emerge down and it keeps those song weeds from germinating. And also when you put a pre-emerge down, you need to make sure that you water it in real good.
Okay.
Because you know if it don't rain, you need to water it in. So because it need to be activated into the soil. So another thing to do now, we go through a real dry winter. The Bermuda grass, the roots are still acting under the soil. You know, it hardly ever happens, but we probably sometimes you need to take that water hole out again and put a little water. It's not like in the summertime, but then roots are very active in the soil. And if you haven't put based on your soil test, if you need to put a potassium or phosphate down, that's a good time to do that. It helps build those strong root system.
Okay.
But no nitrogen fertilizer this time of the year, but that phosphate and potassium, it's good for the root system down there to get established real good in the soil. And that'll prevent a lot of diseases from getting onto your lawn.
Okay.
So we do have a disease, you know, because I know last year that winter kill was something rough there. So and we try to prevent that. And also you have a place that where the water kind of standing in your lawn, you might want to put some little sand over there and try to even it out for the water can drain better. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. So water your lawns in the winter.
If we're a real dry spell.
Okay.
And we probably don't have that, I hope, anyway.
I hope we don't. Now, what about this, Booker? So all of the leaves are off the trees. Isn't it a good time to check our trees for damage?
You can check the tree for damage to make sure that if you think you got some trees that's dead in there, you can get you a little knife or something and scrape some of the bark in there. If it's still green, that tree is still alive. Because a lot of times people think the tree is dead because our leaf fell off and the branch begin to look rot and stuff. But check those trees before you do any kind of pruning, anything, cutting anything off there. Get you a little knife, scrape the bark to make sure if you see some green in there, it's still alive. And also, if you have any, you want to do some pruning sometime, on trees and everything, that's a good time to do while the tree is dormant. Okay. You look at that tree and say, this branch need to come off there. It's in the way, it's in the power line. This would be a good time to cut it off there because I'll tell people, make the 3-prong cut. Because you can't kill a tree now by pruning. You don't prune it the correct way. Okay. Because you can prune that branch and split down that bark, and the whole tree begin to die. Okay. So you make that 3-prong cut on that, and it's safe way. And if a big tree, Chris, over my head or something, I like to call some professional out there to do that. Okay. I won't try to do it myself. I won't try to do nothing like that myself because it could be damage and danger. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Certified arborist. Certified
all right,
arborist,
appreciate that. Mm-hmm. All right, Walter. What about vegetable gardening in January?
Well, this is the time you get your seed catalog out and start ordering your seeds. Because you want to make sure, some varieties, there are limited supplies of certain seeds, particularly some of the heirloom things. So you want to make sure that you can get your pack. Also, you can build your cold frames. A cold frame is just simply a box that you build on the south side of the house. And basically, you can use it to transition plants that's been raised indoors, such as your cabbage and all that. You can just use that as a transitioning phase before you plant them, which would be next month. Okay. Also, you want to make sure with that cold frame that at night, you want to make sure that you cover it. Obviously, you want to close down the top, which should be glass or plexiglass, and you want to put some covering over that to retain that heat. But the main thing you want to do the next morning when it's 40-some degrees, you want to get up and open that top up and let those plants be able to, do respiration or whatever they need to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, respiration, transpiration, all of that good stuff.
And then once again, during that month, any low spots, like you said with the lawn, any low spots that you see out there in your garden spots, hey, let's get it leveled off so they can drain properly and you not have all those problems that you might have.
All right, thanks, Walter. Now, Tanya, our queen of the ornamental world.
Yeah.
What do we need to do in January?
All right, well, you should already have your pansies out there in the ground.
Oh, yeah.
And they're pretty tough as nails, but to keep them blooming profusely, you can go out there and deadhead them when they start to go and keep them going longer. And don't forget about our creatures out there. Yeah. Put out some suet, a block of suet. It's really inexpensive. You're talking maybe $1.50 a block, or you can make your own. There's lots of recipes online. And hang a suet cage up for the birds. It'll get used a whole lot. And then inside the house, you can go ahead and plant some narcissus bulbs to force. You can do that either in water or in a pot, both. And I like to do that towards the end of December. and have the new year and have the house smelling great. Those
yeah, they do
narcissus
smell great.
so good.
Yeah,
Don't
they
plant
do.
too many; it can be overwhelming. But one nice vase on the coffee table smells great.
Okay. Now let's go back to deadheading the pansies here for a second. So how far back do we need to deadhead them? Do we just pinch them off right at the bloom, or do we need to go further down in the plant to do that?
I would say if you're deadheading your pansies, yay. So if you're doing it at all, that's fantastic. So, but I personally like to go just a little bit further down and not leave that part
Yeah.
sticking up. But yeah, if you're deadheading your pansies, you're on top of stuff.
Okay. Now forcing our bulbs,
Uh-huh.
narcissus, is it best to do it in water or soil? Which one would you prefer?
You can do either.
Either one? Okay.
I like to do it in water because I think it looks really classy and
water.
neat for
Okay.
people to see. You just get a big clear glass container, put some rocks in the bottom, and nestle your bulbs down in there. Make sure they're pointed side up where
Right.
they can come out the right way. And then put water into there. You want the water to come just below where the bulb is. You don't want
Okay.
the bulb to sit in water; it'll rot.
Okay.
But yeah, they'll do great in there and looks really nice that way, I think.
All right, here's our next Q&A. Before we move on to February, we have another viewer question from Jean up in Tipton County. She writes, my local nursery has almond trees for sale. They said they are suitable for zones 5 through 9. Will they survive our winters here in zone 7? So what does my group think? Who wants to jump out first?
He said they probably will survive here, but
probably will.
we're probably not going to do a whole lot of nuts on it because our zone. If you do try to plant those, you probably need more than one variety.
Okay.
You need more than one tree. I'm saying.
Okay.
Out there, so for pollination purposes and stuff in there.
Okay.
But with the only survive nuts, what do you think, Walter?
Well, I wouldn't recommend it.
Right.
Yeah, it's just
I like to see you save your money.
money.
Okay, Tanya?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it, but the thing is, the tree is probably going to survive. It's closely related to peaches, and we can grow peaches. The thing is they bloom very early in the
Early,
spring,
early.
and usually the frost, we have a late frost that gets them, so don't expect to get nuts, but
Right,
your
yeah.
tree will probably.
Yeah, our early frost, of course, will damage those blooms and those juvenile fruit.
Right.
Right.
So, no. But I will say this: it is your garden.
That's right.
If you
That's
want to
right.
give it a shot, then go ahead, and you may prove us wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're just not adaptive to our environment that we have here in Tennessee. Go ahead, Walter.
Well, I was just going to say, and that's with a lot of plants. You know, sometimes you get the isolated case where one survived or something. But I just tell people, remember 2007 with the late freeze, and then remember last winter, things we told people not to plant, they planted, and we did have that winter that showed what happens in Zone 7.
All right, there you have it. Now let's talk about February, Walter. So what are we doing out in the vegetable garden in February?
Well, basically, February is when I get excited because now we can actually start planting some things, such as cabbage and kale and Brussels sprouts, your mustard greens. We can set out onions, the sugar peas, radishes, spinach. So, I'm getting excited at that point. And we can also, obviously transfer the plants that we had in the cold frames. We can now transfer them out, the cabbage and all that, to plant. And also during that time, even for my fruit trees, this is when I like to put another layer of horticultural oil on there. And, the kind I use takes about 5 ounces to the gallon.
Okay.
And that kind of will, as things kind of warm up, when we get the warm days and some insects start crawling around, that kind of takes care of those problems.
Okay.
But hey, I'm getting excited. I've even cranked the tiller up. Yes.
Make sure it's still working. Huh?
Oh, yes. And I will apply, obviously, a non-selective herbicide to kind of knock out some of those weeds and things that's kind of overwintered. I'll be ready for that.
Now, for those who have a cover crop, is this a good time to till under that cover crop, or?
It just depends on what you plant. Obviously, if you plant some of the early stuff, you'll need to, till that in. But if you planted that crop and you're gonna plant some warm season stuff later on, then you'll till that in at that time.
Okay. And before we move on to Tanya, let's tell people why use the dormant oil. What does dormant oil do anyway?
Well, it just basically protects the tree against insects and get those early emerging insects such as scales.
Right.
It kind of gives you some defense against those and give you a head start, on your insect for the year.
Okay. Thanks, Walter. Now back to our queen.
All right.
There you go.
All right, Ms. Tanya, what do we need to be doing in February?
Time to get out those pruning shears.
Oh, already?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Now's
All
a great time to prune your roses.
Yes.
People ask me a lot, when do I prune my roses?
Yes.
People have a tendency to want to do it right at the end of the growing season, but you really should wait
Okay.
until probably sometime late February.
Okay.
You
Late
wanna-
February.
Yeah,
okay.
you want to prune out any of your diseased or dead limbs, branches on your rose bushes. Exactly how you prune them depends on your goals and what kind of variety you're growing. And if you have a rose out there, a rose bush that has rose rosette, and you know it, and you haven't dug it up yet, get the shovel too. Put the pruners down and just dig it up. Unfortunately, we have a lot of that in our county. So if you've got rose rosette, dig it up. If you don't, now's a good time to prune it back. You can also, thin your roses a little bit if you need to provide good air circulation and cut down on some of the fungal diseases that we have problems with. Also, it's a great time to prune your fruit trees. Your apples and peaches have to be pruned differently. So if you are trying to grow apples, you want a nice central leader system with one main trunk up through the top. If you're growing things like peaches, they need more sunlight penetration into the tree and better air circulation because they're prone to a lot of fungal problems. So you want to prune them into a vase shape.
Okay.
And if you don't know how to do that, call your extension office and we have publications with diagrams
That's right.
that we can show you instead of me trying to explain it with a bunch of words. But also, while you're out there, get yourself a little seed packet of some cilantro seed and you can plant cilantro. I like to think about in the spring garden around Valentine's Day. So February 14th, mid-February. When I think Valentine's Day, I think lettuce and cilantro. So I get out there and plant my lettuce and cilantro seeds, and they're very easy to do from seed. If you're new to gardening that way, it's a good place to start.
Okay. So Valentine's Day, you don't have to just think about chocolates.
Right.
Hey, you think about cilantro?
Cilantro and lettuce, yeah.
How about that? And she said, get your shovels too if you have the rose rosette. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So just get it all out.
Yeah,
dig
get it out of there. Yeah.
Because there's nothing you can do about it.
Right, there's
Okay.
no spray, there's no
Right.
magic anything we have right now.
So
Yeah.
get it out. Thank you, Tanya. All right, Booker, finish us up for February in our lawns.
One thing about February this time, this is a good time now if you had fescue lawn.
Okay.
And you need to overseed that fescue lawn now. You have some bare spots in there. This is a good time to do it. Probably at the last of February. You want to seed those seeds as long as the soil is not frozen. And then you get you a garden rake if you have a small area like Walter said, and go out through there and just rake it up real good. And before the seed can come in contact with the soil. And you probably need to water it in for a while to keep it moist for a couple of days. But it'd be a good time to get it started now, because if you wait too late, if it come up, that hot summer could kill those root systems. So you want to get it planted now as long as the soil's not frozen. And this is a good time. We talked about lawnmower a few minutes ago.
Yes.
If you need a new lawnmower, if you need one now, all that don't work, you need to go to the store now and get you one of this. They probably got a sale going on.
Oh, yeah.
They probably got some sale going on in February. You need a weed eater. This would be a good time to go and get you a weed eater for that, because they're probably running a sale.
A shovel.
Anything, because cause you wait till around April sometimes and you're going to see the price probably just going up a little higher and stuff in there. So I think I want to do the same thing, give me a weed eater.
Weed eater, okay.
I need a weed eater. So man, went out the last part of this cutting season, so we're going to do one. So this would be a good time to do that.
Okay. Now, what if we still have some of those weeds out there, those winter weeds are going to be growing prolifically around this time? What do we need to do about those?
We'll probably get some good
the
weather.
hen bits, the chickweed will still
You
be
probably
out
get
there
some
around
good
this
weather. You can spot spray over Roundup or something like that in there.
Okay.
As long as the weather's right, just read the label on there to make sure it's okay. Just spot spray that. And then, so if it's not too bad, you might use some 2,4-D or something on there. But make sure you read the label on the 2,4-D, because it will drift sometime. And you might have other plants around. So make sure you read the label on there. Good thing to do is spot spray those weeds out there.
Okay.
Because those hen beds, the pollens are going to start coming up pretty soon. You'll see that germinating there in February, March. So it look really, really bad in there. One thing about it, that we'll die during the summertime.
Okay.
But you want to put a pre-mur down, try to prevent those from coming up.
Okay.
That's what you do that in there. So that's a good thing to do.
Right, yeah, they don't like that heat.
They don't like the heat. The heat
But
don't
the thing
get
about it, you better catch them before they produce seeds.
But see, yeah.
Drop those seeds to the
Drop those
ground.
seeds, yeah.
Right, because
So
they'll
we-
definitely come back.
It's coming more and more out there, yeah. But it'd be a good time to go to your garden center stores and buy you some new tools if you need something. Not just for lawnmower, but anything you might think you need this year. So
Pruners,
pruners,
the shovel to dig out your
all the
your roses.
yeah. So February, March be a good time to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just like walking around the garden center. I'm like a kid in the toy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to do that as well. All right, that was fun. So
That's good. I
thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
Appreciate you being here. Well, that's all we have time for today. Since this is our final episode for this season, I want to thank all of our viewers for watching and sending us your gardening questions. And thanks to all of our guests for sharing their expertise, extension agents from around the area, master gardeners, and all the other horticultural experts who've been on the show to help answer your gardening questions. We're going dormant for the winter months, but we'll be back next year to help you get your garden going again. In the meantime, don't forget, County Extension agents are there to answer questions year-round, so don't hesitate to give us a call. I'm Chris Cooper. I'll see you next year on The Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. From everyone at WKNO and UT-TSU Extension, have a safe and joyful holiday season and a happy new year. Thank you. Be safe.
Production funding for The Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by Good Winds Landscape and Garden Center in Germantown since 1943 and continuing to offer its plants for successful gardening with 7 greenhouses and 3 acres of plants, plus comprehensive landscape services. International Paper Foundation, the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.